There are certain stories that we love to read over and over again. Girl meets boy, they fall in love, they live happily ever after. Or girl accidentally sparks a revolution, takes on a rogue government, wins, everyone lives happily ever after. These are the stories that we read over and over again in YA, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but what about the stories we're forgetting to tell? Hi everybody, it's Lydia here. This is the first video in a series of videos I'm going to be making over the next month talking about diversity in YA. I'm going to be talking about diversity in authors, diversity in characters, but today I want to talk about diversity in the stories themselves. You see, the great thing about fiction is that there are no limits to what you can write about, but the fact is that even in this day and age, there are certain stories that just aren't getting written because for whatever reason, they push limits that we seem to have imposed on fiction ourselves. The reason I've decided to focus on YA in these videos is because I feel like this is the genre that is constantly hammering against those limits. And yet, even in YA, there are still some stories being left unwritten. Some of those stories revolve around the LGBT community, and YA has for a while now been rather leading the charge with regards to books about LGBT characters. But one of my concerns is that we're really only seeing books with LGBT characters in them when it's about them being LGBT. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with those books. In fact, considering the number of young people who suffer as a result of their sexual orientation and gender identity, it's incredibly important that those books exist. But wouldn't it be great if there were also books about LGBT characters fighting dragons or solving crimes? We need more stories where these characters are treated in the same way as straight cis characters, and that means more representation in stories that don't just highlight the fact that they're not straight cis characters. Also, just briefly, because I'm going to talk about this in a later video, but I mentioned how we're seeing a lot more stories about LGBT issues, and I want to correct myself because I don't think we're seeing nearly enough stories about bisexual and transgender issues, and that's something that definitely needs to change. But more of that at a later date. Another concept I'd love to see more of in YA are plots or subplots that don't involve love. This is actually one story type that I feel is more of a rarity in YA than in any other genre, because I feel like in YA that ever elusive happy ending can't be achieved until two people have fallen in love. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, of course. It's an entirely reasonable ending, and in the real world lots of people don't get their happily ever after until they've met that special someone. But equally, there's a whole host of people whose happy ending doesn't revolve around love, and I'd really like to see more of that in YA because it just rarely ever seems to happen. And to be honest, the love stories are getting kind of predictable. My final issue is one I've actually mentioned before, but I want to talk about it again because it's something which I feel is really important and which honestly is only getting worse, and that is female friendships in YA, or the lack of them. I've read a lot of YA, and yet I can barely think of any books that feature female friendships. And I'm not just talking about including a brief conversation between two female characters just so that it passes the Bechdel-Wallace test. No, I'm talking about a full-on developed female friendship. This might seem like a pretty trivial issue to some, but the fact is that we live in a world where women are constantly being pitted against each other in all walks of life. Think about the numerous rom-coms you've seen where the guy is the one who is cheating, but he's not presented as the cheating scum he is. Oh no, it's the other woman who is positioned as the bad guy. Or even just in day-to-day life, there are so many magazines devoted to pitting woman against woman with inane articles about who wore it better. As with a lot of issues that we face in the real world, fiction is where we have the opportunity to flip that on its head. And with regards to this issue, YA, which has a large female audience, should be working to counteract that by including more female friendships. So those are just three out of many topics that I really want to see more of in YA, and I'd love to hear more about what you want to see more of in YA, so let me know in the comments below. The YA genre is one of the most exciting book genres to read from these days because it seems like year on year we're broaching topics that just haven't been told before. But there are so many more stories that still have yet to be told, and I only hope that in the future these will come to light. That's it for me today. I will see you again soon, but until then, bye!